watching.
Hello, dears. Welcome back to Fear. Tonight, we dive into 4 terrifying rain horror stories. So, dim your lights, put on your headphones, and let's begin. I used to think Los Angeles was too loud to be scary. Too many people, too many lights, too many cars on every road at every hour. Even at 2 a.m., the city breathes, it hums, it never really goes quiet. But that night, the night it rained for the first time in 4 months, I learned that a city can go silent in ways that have nothing to do with noise. I was living alone in a second-floor apartment in Silver Lake. Small place, 1 bedroom, a kitchen the size of a closet, and a window that faced the alley behind the building. I liked that window. During the day, I could watch pigeons and hear the neighbors argue, and sometimes smell someone grilling downstairs. It felt connected to something. The rain started around 9 p.m. Not a gentle rain, a heavy, sudden downpour. The kind LA gets maybe twice a year. The kind nobody here owns a real umbrella. I remember hearing it hit the window and actually smiling. I made tea. I put on a documentary. I felt cozy, which is not something I felt often in that apartment. Around midnight, the power went out. The whole block just gone. No flicker, no warning, just darkness and the sound of rain. I sat still for a moment, waiting for it to come back. It didn't. I found my phone, turned on the flashlight, and dug a candle out of the kitchen drawer. The apartment looked different by candlelight, smaller, closer. The shadows in the corners looked thick. I told myself it was fine. It was just rain. LA's drainage system was bad. Power outages happened. I went to the window to look outside. The alley below was flooded. Maybe 3 inches of dark water running fast along the pavement, carrying wrappers and leaves. The street light at the end of the alley was out. Everything was dark and wet and quiet except for the rain. And then I saw the figure, standing at the far end of the alley, not moving, just standing there in the rain, facing my window. I told myself it was someone waiting out the storm, someone who ducked into the alley for shelter. That made sense. People do that. But the figure wasn't under the small roof overhang near the dumpsters, which would have been the logical place to stand. They were standing in the open, in the rain, getting completely soaked, and they were looking up at my window. I stepped back. My candle made the room behind me glow orange. I realized with a slow, sinking feeling that anyone standing in that dark alley could see me perfectly. I was lit up, a soft, glowing target in a dark building. I moved to the side of the window and looked again, careful not to be seen. Still there, still not moving. The rain was coming down hard, and this person was not reacting to it at all. No hunching, no covering their head, just standing. I called my neighbor, Marco, who lived downstairs. He picked up on the 3rd ring, groggy and annoyed. "There's someone in the alley," I said. "They've been standing there for a while, just staring up." I heard him move to his own window. A pause, then, "I don't see anyone." I looked again. The alley was empty. I laughed a little, embarrassed, told him I was sorry. Must have been the rain playing tricks with shadows. I went back to my couch. The rain continued. The power stayed out. I eventually fell asleep sitting up, my phone in my hand. In the morning, the sun came out the way it always does in LA after rain, almost aggressive, like it was trying to make you forget the night before. I opened the window to get some air and looked down at the alley. There were footprints in the wet concrete below my window, deep, deliberate ones, not passing through, not someone who walked by. Someone had been standing directly below my window for a long time. The prints were facing inward, toward the wall.
Whoever it was had been standing there looking straight up at me, and from the depth and spread of the prints, they had been there long before I ever looked out. I moved out 2 months later. I told people it was the commute, the rent. I never told anyone about the footprints. My uncle has a ranch outside a small town in West Texas, about 40 minutes from anything you could call a proper road. I grew up visiting him every summer. I knew that land, the flat stretch of it, the dry creek beds, the way the sky at night was so full of stars it felt fake. But I'd never been there during a real storm. I drove out in October, just me for a long weekend. My uncle was in Odessa visiting his daughter and said I could use the place to decompress. I was going through something heavy that year. A bad breakup, some work problems, the kind of slow stress that builds in your chest and never really leaves. The ranch felt like the right place to be quiet. I arrived in the afternoon while the sky was still clear. I unloaded my bag, found a spare key under the same clay pot it had always been under, and let myself in. By evening, the weather changed.
It came from the west, the way storms always do out there. A wall of dark cloud that moved fast, swallowing the horizon. By the time I'd made dinner, the wind was going. And by the time I sat down to eat, the rain had started. Not soft rain, West Texas storm rain. Hard, almost horizontal, hitting the metal roof like gravel. The ranch house had no internet. My phone had one bar that kept disappearing. I had brought books, which I hadn't actually opened yet, and a flashlight, and enough food for 4 days. I was prepared. What I wasn't prepared for was the sound. My uncle's ranch sits on about 200 acres, most of it open land. When the storm picked up, the wind coming across all that open space made a sound I can only describe as breathing. A deep, rhythmic pushing of air that came in waves. Inhale, exhale. The walls of the house flexed slightly with each gust. The windows went dark with rain. Around 10 p.m., I heard the dog. My uncle didn't have a dog, but there it was, a low, pained whining coming from somewhere close to the house, outside in the rain. I listened for a full minute before I was sure. Something alive, crying out there. I put on my rain jacket and opened the back door. The storm hit me full in the face. Rain and wind so heavy I could barely see past the small circle of my flashlight. I swept it across the backyard, the fence posts, the old truck, the tool shed, looking for the source of the sound. It had stopped. I stood there for a moment, rain pouring down my neck, and then I heard it again, not whining this time, knocking.
3 slow, even knocks from inside the tool shed. I want to be clear about something. I am not a jumpy person. I grew up going to that ranch. I had slept in that house alone dozens of times as a kid. I knew the sounds of the land. Wind knocking things over, animals getting into the shed, pipes groaning in the cold. I was not the type to panic. But 3 even, deliberate knocks from inside a locked shed, in the middle of a storm, on a ranch where nobody else was supposed to be. That was not a natural sound. I stood at the edge of the porch for a long time. The rain was incredible, filling every low part of the yard. My flashlight beam kept being swallowed by the dark. I did not open the shed. I went back inside, locked the door, and pushed a kitchen chair under the handle. Old habit from childhood that I hadn't thought about in years. My body just remembered it. I sat at the kitchen table and listened. The storm raged for another 3 hours. I heard the knocking twice more, always 3 beats, always evenly spaced, always from the shed, and then nothing. In the morning, the sky was clean and cold, and the land smelled like wet clay. I walked out to the shed with my uncle's spare key in my hand. The padlock was already open, not broken, opened cleanly, and the lock was just hanging there. Inside, a muddy floor, a knocked-over shelf of old paint cans, and wet boot prints, small ones, like a child's.
leading from the back wall, where there were no windows and no other doors, to the front, going nowhere.
I called my uncle, told him something had been in his shed. He was quiet for a moment and then said, "Did it knock 3 times?" I asked him what he meant. He said that wasn't the first time someone had reported that. Said a family had lived on that land 80 years ago, lost a child in a flood. Same land, same spot. He said it like it was a normal thing to know about your property. I left that afternoon, and I haven't been back. The cabin was my idea. I want to be honest about that. I found it online. I booked it, and I convinced my 2 friends, Della and Paul, that a weekend in the Smoky Mountains in November was a romantic, rustic idea, and not a deeply stupid one. The listing described it as secluded. What it meant was that you drove 40 minutes on a paved road, turned onto a gravel road for 20 more minutes, and then turned onto a road that was really just 2 tire tracks through wet leaves that led to a dark structure surrounded by trees so tall they blocked most of the sky. We arrived Friday evening. It had been drizzling all day, the kind of light, persistent rain that doesn't seem serious but soaks through everything eventually. The cabin was small and smelled of wood smoke and damp. There was a fireplace, a kitchenette, 2 bedrooms, and a porch that looked out into the trees. No neighbors visible in any direction. We made it work. Paul got the fire going. Della found a bottle of wine someone had left in the cabinet. We ate pasta and played cards, and the rain got heavier and the fire got warmer, and by 10 o'clock it almost felt like the trip was a good idea.
I was the first one to notice the car. I had gone to the porch to get some air before bed. The rain was steady now, drumming on the porch roof, and the trees were dripping. My eyes adjusted to the dark, and I looked down the tire track road that led back to the gravel road. About 50 yards down, parked just off the track behind a cluster of trees, was a car. Dark-colored, no lights. I could just make out the shape of it, with a rectangular outline, slightly darker than the dark around it. I stood there looking at it for a long time, wondering if I was imagining shapes in the dark. You do that in places that are unfamiliar. Your brain wants to build something from shadows. But then the rain shifted, and my eyes adjusted more, and I was certain there was a car parked there, sitting with its lights off in the trees, pointed toward the cabin. I went inside and told Paul. He came out, looked, confirmed he could see it too, and then did what Paul always did. Decided there was a normal explanation. Hiker's car, someone who'd parked and gone further up the trail, teenagers who drove out here to drink. It's nobody, he said. We went to bed. I woke up at 3 a.m. because the fire had gone out and the cabin was cold. I lay in the dark listening to the rain, which had gotten harder, and thought about the car. Something was not letting me rest about it. I got up and went to the front window, looked out. The car was closer.
Not on the road anymore. It had moved, or been moved, across the patch of open ground between the tree line and the cabin's small yard. It was maybe 20 feet from the porch now. Still dark, still no lights. But now I could see that someone was sitting inside it. Just a silhouette, still, facing the cabin. I woke Paul. He looked. His whole body changed when he saw it. That easy calm he'd had earlier just drained right out of him. We woke Della. We locked every door and window. Paul found the cabin owner's emergency number posted by the phone and called it. Voicemail. He called 911. They said they'd send someone, but given the roads and the rain, it might be an hour. We sat together in the dark, listening to the rain, watching the car through the window. After about 20 minutes, the car's headlights came on. Just the headlights, engine off, no movement. Just those 2 lights suddenly blazing at us, lighting up the rain between us like a curtain. We could not see anything behind them. They stayed on for exactly 11 minutes. I know because Della was counting, quietly under her breath, without even seeming to realize she was doing it. Then they went off, and when we looked again, the car was gone. The sheriff arrived an hour and 40 minutes later, apologetic about the roads. He walked the property with a flashlight. In the mud of the yard, he found tire tracks.
fresh ones, coming from the tree line, stopping 20 feet from the porch, and then reversing back the way they'd come. He wrote it down, told us it was probably just teenagers messing around, probably harmless. Then he looked at us with an expression that didn't match those words and said we should consider heading back to town. We left before sunrise. A week later, I was looking at the cabin's reviews and found one from 3 years earlier, a couple who had stayed there in October. They wrote about a car parking outside in the middle of the night, lights coming on for a while, then vanishing. They had rated the cabin 3 stars. They mentioned it was otherwise very cozy. I still don't understand how they went back to sleep.
I drive for a living, long haul mostly. The stretch of I-10 between Houston and San Antonio, sometimes further west. I have logged more hours on rain-soaked Texas highways at night than I can count. And I thought I had seen everything those roads could show you. I was wrong. This happened on a Thursday in late February. I had picked up a load in Houston and was heading west, scheduled to deliver in El Paso the following afternoon. I had done that run maybe 30 times. I knew the mile markers. I knew which truck stops had decent coffee and which ones were worth skipping. I knew the way the highway got flat and lonely once you passed San Antonio. I knew it the way you know a room you've slept in for years. The rain started about an hour west of San Antonio, sudden and serious. February rain in that part of Texas can get violent, and this one had that edge to it. My wipers were going hard, and my headlights were catching the rain in sheets, and I slowed down because the road was flooding in spots, that shallow flash floodwater that looks like nothing. You can push a truck sideways if you hit it wrong. Around 1 a.m. in a stretch of highway with nothing around for miles, no lights, no exits, just flat, dark land on both sides. I saw someone standing on the shoulder. Standing, not walking, not signaling, just standing there, getting soaked, staring at the traffic. I am not supposed to pick people up. Company policy, insurance reasons, common sense. But it was 1 a.m. It was raining hard. And whoever this was had no car visible anywhere and no shelter for probably 10 miles in any direction. I pulled over about 100 yards past them and waited. Nobody came. I checked my mirrors. My headlights lit the road behind me. The shoulder was empty. Nobody walking toward my truck. I sat there for maybe 2 full minutes, engine running, rain hammering the roof. Still nothing. I thought maybe they'd gone down into the drainage ditch. Maybe they'd fallen. I got out, which I know was stupid, and I knew it was stupid while I was doing it, and walked back along the shoulder in the rain with my flashlight. Nobody there. No ditch, no tire tracks from a broken down car, no footprints in the soft, muddy shoulder, just rain and road and darkness. I walked the full 100 yards back to where I had seen them standing. Found nothing.
Got back in my truck. Told myself it was road fatigue. You see things when you've been driving for 5 hours in rain. Your brain starts filling in shapes. I got back on the highway. 20 miles later, I saw them again. Same person, same dark clothing, same position. Standing at the edge of the shoulder, facing traffic, completely still. I know it was 20 miles because I had been watching the mile markers. There was no way a person could have gotten from that first spot to this one. Not on foot, not in that rain, not in that time. I did not stop. I drove past and I watched in my side mirror. The shape of them stood there until my tail lights couldn't reach anymore, and then they disappeared into the dark. I drove the next 4 hours without stopping, straight through. Didn't even pull over for coffee. When I got to the El Paso depot and the load supervisor asked me how the drive was, I almost told him. Started to. Then I looked at his face. Normal guy, early shift, bad coffee, and I stopped myself. I just said the rain was bad. He nodded and said, yeah, they'd had reports of flooding on that stretch all night. I've driven that highway maybe a dozen times since. Always in the daytime now. I rearranged my schedule to make it work. I have never told my dispatcher why. There's a thing that experienced highway drivers say, kind of dark humor, kind of not, that some stretches of road collect things. Bad luck, old accidents, grief that soaks into the asphalt and never fully drains away. I used to laugh at that. I don't anymore. Every time the rain starts and the highway goes dark, I think about that figure standing in the downpour, perfectly still, staring into the headlights of every car that passed. Waiting. I just don't know what for. Thanks for watching Fear Tales. Stay safe tonight, and if it starts raining, maybe don't look out the window.